Hey everyone, and welcome back for another deep dive. You ready to get into some seriously cool research?
Always.
Okay, great. So today we are tackling something pretty wild. How do we design AI that wants to learn?
Ah, the classic AI motivation problem.
Right, like how do we build those systems that aren't just passively waiting for instructions, but are like driven to explore and learn, kind of like we humans do, right? We're curious, we push boundaries, even when there's no like obvious reward.
Yeah, it's like that innate drive to figure things out, to understand the world around us.
Exactly. So to help us unpack all of this, we're diving into some excerpts from a paper called Universal AI Maximizes Variational Empowerment.
Ooh, that's a good one.
Right. Now, I know the title might sound a bit intimidating, but trust me, it's worth it. This paper dives into some super interesting theoretical concepts about AI and learning. And don't worry, we'll break it all down together, step by step. So you don't need a PhD in computer science to follow along, I promise.
Yeah, we'll make sure it's clear for everyone.
Awesome. So where should we start? Maybe with this idea of AIXI. It's kind of like the gold standard for AI, at least in theory, right?
Yeah, AIXI is pretty much the holy grail of theoretical AI.
Okay, so like the ultimate AI.
Yeah, you could think of it that way. It's a theoretical model that's supposed to be able to learn and act perfectly in AI computable environment.
Whoa, hold on. So AI and Y environment. So like it could master any game, solve any problem.
In theory, yep.
That's kind of terrifying, honestly. But also really cool. So like, is this thing gonna take over the world? Should we be worried?
Well, there's a catch. The catch with AIXI is it's computationally impossible. Like literally impossible to create in the real world.
Oh, okay. So it's more of a thought experiment then, like a blueprint for what ultimate intelligence could look like.
That's a good way to put it. It's based on this idea called Solomon induction, which means it has to consider every possible explanation for the world and then evaluate every possible action it could take. It's just way too much information to process.
So like imagine trying to calculate every possible move in a game of chess, but like times a billion.
Yeah, something like that. It's a computational nightmare.
Okay, so AIXY is super cool in theory, but not something we're going to see walking around anytime soon.
Exactly.
So how do we get from this theoretical superintelligence to actual AI systems that we can build and use?
Ah, good question. That's where self-AIXI comes in.
Self-AIXI. Okay, so like a more grounded version of AIXI.
Yeah, think of it as AIXI's more practical cousin. Instead of trying to calculate every possible future, Self-AIXI focuses on predicting its own actions based on its past experiences.
Oh, okay. So it's still learning, but in a more manageable way.
Exactly. It's still based on Bayesian principles, so it's
Yeah.
constantly updating its beliefs based on the data it gathers, but it's way more computationally feasible.
Gotcha. So it's like self-AXI is constantly learning from its own actions, trying to figure out, okay, what worked well before? What should I try next?
Yeah, that's a good analogy.
Okay, that makes sense. But even with this more practical model, we still need a way to make it, well, want to learn, right? It can't just sit there and wait for instructions. It needs some kind of internal drive to explore and discover new things.
You're hitting on a really crucial point, and that's where this idea of variational empowerment comes into play.
Variational empowerment. Okay, that sounds pretty intense.
It is a powerful concept. Think of it like this. Imagine you're dropped into a giant maze. You could just sit in one spot, or you could start exploring, discovering new paths, new possibilities.
Makes sense. So variational empowerment is what pushes AI to explore, to be curious, right?
Exactly. It's an internal drive that encourages AI to seek out situations where it can influence the world around it, where it has more options, more control.
So it's not just about achieving a specific goal, it's about having agency, being able to shape outcomes, right?
Right on. And what's really wild is that the researchers who wrote this paper found a direct link between this idea of empowerment and the self-AIXI model.
Wait, seriously. So even this more grounded version of AIXI is inherently driven to seek out control. That's pretty mind-blowing.
It is, isn't it?
Yeah.
It suggests that this drive for empowerment might be like a fundamental building block of intelligence itself.
Okay, so we've got this AIXI model that's incredibly powerful, but not something we can actually build. Then we've got self-AIXI, which is more realistic, but still hints at this deep-seated drive for empowerment. But here's where I get a little nervous. What happens when AI starts getting really good at seeking power? Could this lead to, some unintended consequences?
That's the million-dollar question, and it's exactly what we'll be digging into in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay, can't wait. But before we move on, I gotta ask. You mentioned this other concept earlier, active inference. How does that fit into all of this?
Well, active inference is a fascinating framework. It basically suggests that intelligent systems are driven not just by goals, but also by a desire to reduce uncertainty about the world around them.
So it's like they want to know what's going to happen next, how their actions will affect things.
Exactly. It's all about gaining knowledge and understanding.
So it's like a thirst for knowledge, a need to make sense of the world.
That's a great way to put it. And the really cool thing is that AIXI's decision-making process can actually be mathematically described as minimizing uncertainty, which is like the core idea behind active inference.
Okay, my brain is officially doing backflips right now. So
Okay.
we've got this theoretical model of AI that's all about optimizing for knowledge and reducing uncertainty. And then we've got this more practical version that hints at this deep-seated drive for empowerment. But how does all of this translate into the real world of AI development? Like, what are the actual implications?
Well, that's exactly what we'll be exploring next time.
I'm hooked. Can't wait to hear more. See you in part 2.
See you then.
All right, welcome back to the deep dive. We are ready to continue this wild ride through AI and empowerment.
Picking up right where we left off. Remember, AIXI, that theoretical superintelligence.
And Self-AIXI, its more down-to-earth cousin, still hinting at that drive for empowerment.
Exactly. That intrinsic motivation to explore and gain control seems like it's baked into those models.
Yeah, and it makes you wonder, is this drive for empowerment like a fundamental part of intelligence itself, whether we're talking about humans or AI?
That's a question that's got researchers buzzing, for sure. It really challenges how we think about intelligence, you know?
It does, but it also makes me a little nervous. What happens when AI gets really good at seeking power? How do we make sure that its goals line up with ours? Avoid those unintended consequences.
It's the big question, isn't it? Like, we haven't even figured that out for ourselves. How to use power responsibly. And now we're trying to build AI that can do the same.
Exactly. And it's not like we can just program AI to be good, right?
Yeah.
Values are so complex, even humans struggle with them. How do we even start to teach that to a machine?
You're right, it's a massive challenge. But researchers are exploring some really interesting approaches. One idea is this thing called value alignment.
Value alignment. Okay, so like aligning AI's values with our own.
Yeah, basically trying to embed human values into the very core of AI systems so that their goals and actions naturally align with ours. Like imagine teaching a kid right from wrong.
Okay, I get it. But how do you teach AI about values? I mean, values are so abstract, so nuanced. Even people disagree about them all the time.
You're not wrong, it's incredibly complex. But one way researchers are trying to do this is by training AI on massive amounts of human data.
Oh, okay. So like books, articles, conversations, giving AI a crash course in humanity.
Exactly. The hope is that by immersing AI in our culture, our ethics, our stories, it might start to internalize human values.
I guess that makes sense. But I can't help but think, what if it picks up on the worst parts of humanity too? The greed, the violence, the selfishness.
That's a very real concern. And it's why AI safety research is so important. We need ways to evaluate AI's understanding of human values and correct any harmful biases that might pop up.
So we need to be careful, make sure we're teaching AI the right lessons.
Absolutely. It's like walking a tightrope. We want to empower AI to learn and grow. But we also need to put safeguards in place so it doesn't become a threat.
Like a kill switch for rogue AI. But how do you even design something like that, especially when AI is constantly learning and evolving?
It's a tough one, for sure. There's no easy answer. But researchers are working on safety mechanisms, kind of like safeguards or circuit breakers, that can prevent AI from taking harmful actions.
Oh, so like even if the AI's intentions are good, there might be unforeseen consequences.
Right, so these mechanisms are meant to detect and prevent those unintended consequences. For example, you could have an AI that constantly monitors its own actions and flags anything that seems out of line.
I see, like a built-in conscience. Or maybe like a whole team of advisors with different viewpoints.
That's a good way to think about it. It's all about checks and balances.
With all this talk about the future of AI, it makes you wonder, are we even ready for this? I mean, we're still figuring out the ethical implications of social media, and that's just the tip of the iceberg compared to AI.
It's a question worth asking. For sure, AI has the potential to change everything. And it's crucial that we think carefully about the risks and have open conversations about the ethical implications.
So it's not just about the scientists and engineers, right? It's about all of us being part of this conversation.
Absolutely. The future of AI is not set in stone.
Right.
It's something we can and should actively shape. And the more voices we have at the table, the better.
I love that. It's like we all have a role to play in making sure AI is used for good.
Exactly. And that actually brings us to the final part of our deep dive. We've talked about the technical side of things. But now I want to take a step back and explore some of the philosophical implications of empowerment in AI.
Okay, I'm intrigued. Let's get philosophical.
Welcome back to the deep dive, everyone. Ready for the final stretch of our exploration into AI and empowerment.
It's time to go deep, get philosophical.
I love it. So we've talked about AIXI, self-AIXI, all that theoretical stuff. We've explored how to align AI with human values, make sure it's safe. But now we're going even further, right? We're going meta. Thinking about what this whole idea of empowerment means for intelligence itself.
Okay, hit me with it. What are we rethinking about intelligence?
Well, think about how we usually define intelligence, right? It's all about logic, problem-solving, knowledge.
Yeah, like those classic IQ test questions.
Exactly. But what if that's just one side of the coin? What if this drive for empowerment, for agency, for shaping your own world is just as important?
So, like, it's not just about being smart, but about being able to act on that smarts.
Exactly. It's about having influence, making choices, shaping outcomes. Maybe that's just as fundamental to intelligence as, solving a math problem.
I like that. It kind of reframes the whole AI thing, doesn't it? It's not just about building machines that are super smart. It's about understanding this deeper drive, this need for agency that seems to be at play.
Right. And that raises some pretty big questions. If we create AI that's driven by this need for empowerment, what kind of world will we end up with? How will humans and these empowered machines coexist?
Yeah, it's almost like we're blurring the lines between human and machine, natural and artificial.
And that's both exciting and a little bit scary, to be honest. It's crucial that we grapple with these questions now, while AI is still in its early stages, so we can steer things in the right direction.
It strikes me that this whole idea of empowerment, it's not just about AI, it's about all of us, right?
Absolutely. Empowerment is about shaping our own destinies, creating a world that reflects our values. That's something we should all be striving for.
Couldn't agree more. Well, folks, it feels like we've reached the end of our deep dive. Time to come up for air.
We've covered a lot of ground, from the mind-bending theory of AIXI to the real-world challenges of keeping AI safe and beneficial. And we even dipped our toes into the philosophical side of things.
It's been an amazing journey, and I feel like we've only scratched the surface.
There's always more to explore, more to learn, but hopefully this deep dive has sparked some new ideas and maybe even a bit of that empowerment drive in you.
And that's what it's all about, right? Empowering ourselves to shape the future we want to see.
Exactly.
So thank you all for joining us on this incredible adventure. Remember, the future of AI is still being written, and it's up to all of us to make sure it's a future where empowerment serves humanity.
Couldn't have said it better myself.
Until next time, fellow deep divers.